Hi, and welcome to Huddle Up, the podcast from Huddle, where we're holding space for real stories, shared power, and collective change. Huddle works alongside young people, organizations, and communities to create fairer systems and better opportunities. Not just for young people, but with them. And this podcast is where those stories come to life. Each episode will hear from young leaders, practitioners, and partners who are reshaping the way decisions are made and how programs are designed. Together, we'll explore what it takes to build equitable partnerships, share power meaningfully, and create change that lasts. We believe that when young people are involved at every stage, from design to decision-making to delivery, systems become fairer and communities become stronger. So let's huddle up and get started with today's episode. And in today's episode, we're bringing to you 4 IYPC Involving Young People collective consultants. And I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves quickly and to tell you when they joined the collective. So let's kick off with Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I joined the IYPC collective in 2023.
Thanks, Dan. And Shirley, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shirley, and I joined the IYPC collective in 2023 as well.
Wonderful. And Thalia?
Hi, I'm Thalia, and I joined the collective in 2020, and I'm currently the IYPC coordinator.
Amazing. Thank you. And finally, Sam. Hi.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sam, or Samuel, and I joined the collective in 2020.
Amazing. Lovely to have all of you. Before we start today's conversation, Shirley, can I invite you to tell our listeners a little bit about the IYPC and Esme Fairbairn and the partnership?
Yeah, so the IYPC stands for the Involving Young People Collective, which is a group of young people connected by their drive for social change and their desire for fairer funding practices and more accessible funding nationally. So we work with Esme Fairbairn, which is a funder, and the structure of our work is that there will be 12 consultants that will serve a 3-year term. And this started in 2020, so it's now been 5 years. And the role is mostly remotely, so it really enables you to participate in whatever capacity feels more accessible to you and to manage your time as best you can.
Cool. Thank you, Shirley. So today's theme is really about what brings us here. So what brought you to the collective, how we work, and what we've been learning along the way. So I'm going to kick off with the first question, and I'm going to ask Shirley if you can kick us off. If you can start with what brought you to the Involving Young People collective.
Yeah, I think what brought me was the need for something new. I had been working in the grant making space, but with very limited autonomy. And I had heard through the grapevine that the collective is where it's at, where you can really make a difference, your voice is heard, and you can feel like you're kind of developing these different perspectives and adding value to the sector. And I really wanted a little bit of that. So I applied, and the rest is history, I guess.
Cool. Thank you. Who else would like to share what brought you to the collective?
Yeah, and I guess a little bit differently. When I applied, the collective didn't necessarily exist yet. So it was kind of an opportunity that was brought to me by an organization I was previously involved with, which is the Advocacy Academy. And when the position was advertised, the remit was Esme Fairbairn wants to work more directly with young people. We want some young people from organizations we've worked with to come and work directly with us to design a strategy on how to involve young people. Obviously, the work of the collective looks really different now compared to that initial remit. But yeah, I had no idea what grant making was, and I'd seen it from the charity side, what it means to need funding and go for funding. So I was really interested in seeing the other side.
Cool. Thanks. Sam, would you like to share what brought you to the collective?
Yeah, sure. So similar to Thalia, I heard it through my organization previously called Integrate UK. I've always been an advocate for change in all my career, where I'm more corporate aligned, should we just say. I've always found the need to balance that with giving back to community, doing social change. As much as it's good to earn, it's also good to give back to the community and shape that change going forward for future generation. So they don't just have to go through some of the challenges that we went through in my generation and so forth. So yeah, similar to Talia, I think it came off the back of my work with decolonising the museum, for the Bristol Museum. And yeah, I was really just looking for something new, another way to implement change, support change, and just give back. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. And Dan, what about you? What brought you to the Involving Young People collective?
Well, I think for me, like I'd never heard about grant making before. So when I applied, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. But I think the reason why I applied was because I'd spent years being like the young person in the room, but like I wasn't always maybe listened to. And I wanted to be part of something that was not so tokenistic or just symbolic, where young people were actually like shaping decisions and not just signing them off. And I felt like the collective was a space where that was genuinely happening. And hearing other people's experiences when during my interview, I was like, okay, no, this is a space I really want to be part of, and I wanted to contribute to building a better model for that.
Amazing, thank you. And this is a question to any of you. Was there a moment or experience that made you want to be part of this way of working?
I don't think it was a moment, but I think it was a succession of moments because for me, obviously, I had been working with the huddle community and really learning about what does it mean to create change and to kind of actually stand up for your values. And I got to meet people from the collective. Like I met Thalia, and I was just so fascinated about the way of thinking and the possibility of working in a different model where, yes, we have the meetings and we have targets and deadlines, but the way we co-create, the way we think about things, the way we accommodate creativity and accessibility just seems so interesting to me. And I was almost like, oh, that feels like the next step for me to kind of understand better about how can I bring change? How can I really be that kind of person that is trying to bring accessibility for people in communities? So not really a moment, but more like small moments of meeting people here and there that just made me think I want to be there.
Does anyone else have a moment or an experience for them that kind of brought them into the space?
I think for me, just that emphasis on co-working. As mentioned before, some of the work I did with the Bristol Museum, that followed a similar model of an organization, co-working with them and being radical in the way of working to kind of bring forward the experience of lived experience and having that in making change as well. And I think that was quite valuable and important to me. The fact that I didn't have to sort of shelter my lived experiences or shape it to suit a certain narrative. The fact that I could bring it as authentic and as natural and as raw as I've lived it, and bring that to the forefront of decision making, conversations, influencing change, and obviously presenting that to like senior stakeholders. So yeah, I think yeah that, and also some stuff in my personal life as well. So yeah.
Thanks, Sam. So I'm going to move on to the next question. So when you all started working as a paid consultant, what surprised you most about this kind of role? Was there something that challenged your expectations or changed how you see youth leadership in the time that you were on the collective? It's a big question.
I think for me, I honestly didn't even realize you could be paid for something like this. And I thought, like, quite wrongly, that this kind of work, like youth involvement, was something that sat alongside like the real work. So not something that was embedded in it. So I thought that it was like advisory panels or like consultations or workshops. Like they're all useful, but like on the side of things. So I think when we actually did it in practice, I think it really surprised me that it's different. Like the collective feels different because young people were like equal partners in the work and not just contributors. So we were asked questions and not just being like taught to like sign off on it or like just approve something. We were like actually part of co-designing that process.
I hear that. Thalia, what about you?
It's something that surprised me. I think similar to Dan, just yeah, seeing how much we actually drove the work. Like I think a good example of that is the IYPC values, because it's an idea that we really came up with in like a sprint alongside Esme staff, and everything from like the creation of the idea to the development and research and delivery and picking the designer was like really driven by us, and we were supported to do that in a way that I think has been really powerful. And now it's like a thread that runs through all of our work. And I think there are many examples of that in this partnership, whether it's the Involving Young People Fund that again just stemmed from like a little idea and has grown so much. Like we're really able to pursue our passion and our ideas in this project.
Thanks. Shirley, any thoughts on this?
Many thoughts. Definitely with the values, but I think what's really surprised me the most is how welcomed our opinions were. I guess to some extent, even though I was excited to join, I was expecting a bit of an uphill battle where I would have to fight to have my voice heard, for people to really understand what I was saying. But in every single space, there was always that time for me to be that critical friend. And it wasn't understood from the lens of me being just young. It was understood from the lens of I bring experience here, I can contribute here. And that kind of intergenerational working isn't something that you see across different sectors. And it often has a lot of like power imbalances. And here, what really surprised me is that people actively try to work against that. They try to understand what kind of imbalances I might be bringing to the table and to create the space for it to be a bit more dynamic. That was something I had never experienced and still haven't kind of outside this work. So it was really interesting.
Dan, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say as well, like, I think I surprised myself by how quickly my own perspective shifted once we were actually like paid for our expertise. Like, I think being compensated for our time didn't just value us as in our work, but like it almost like unlocked this sense of legitimacy. Like it made myself take myself seriously in a new way. And it made me challenge like what youth leadership looked like when you're resourced instead of just as a volunteering passion.
No, thank you so much. So and I think we're kind of starting to lean into this, but like, what have you learned about yourself through working in this collective model? Shirley, I feel like you're dying to say something.
I think, yeah, these are just some half-assed thoughts at this point. I think what I learned about myself is that I love a team. I thrive in a team setting because I genuinely believe that that mirrors community the best. And it always made me uncomfortable how you would have like leaders making these decisions and it's just based on the same cohesive perspectives. And the collective is completely different. It's exactly what someone was saying yesterday. Same values, but different font. So inevitably, you're always going to end up with a much more fuller perspective. But I think I also learned that I don't have to mirror a collective experience. I often thought that, being African, being a migrant, I had to sort of dilute my experience to be the African experience. And I think in the collective, it was the first time where I really was just Shirley with the Angolan experience. And that was just as valued. I think I had never given myself the chance to understand that could exist and that could be of value in creating something. And through that, I became so much more confident in how I speak up and how I communicate and how I want to create change. So that really surprised me because I was always like focused on the facts and the evidence. And now I'm much more focused on what is the picture we're wanting to create and what are the different pathways. It made me a lot less rigid, if that's even possible.
Thanks, Shirley. So Thalia, Sam, would either of you like to share in terms of what you've learned about yourself through working in the collective model?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I think something that I learned about myself is that the collective is kind of like the testing ground, or like it models the way I want to show up in other spaces a lot of the time, because a reflection I kept having when I would go into other spaces and come back into the collective space was like, okay, wow, this feels so nice. I really like being here. I like the way that we relate to each other. And then it's just started becoming something that I wanted to bring into other spaces I was stepping into. So I definitely learned that about myself, that, yeah, this is a way I like to relate to people. And it's definitely impacted like my professional, my educational, personal relationships for sure.
Cool. Thanks, Thalia. Sam, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I kind of echo some of those points. The main point for me was just more around the emotional impact of a working environment. Again, going from my professional life, being a bit more rigid, should you say, IYPC offered something that was more emotionally intelligent and emotionally aware. And if I can be open, a bit more emotionally intimate, regards to the check-ins, regards to how everyone was doing, different forms of that. It wasn't just straight to business. There was a bit of scene setting and emotional welfare, care. And I think that's something that's quite a valuable model that I've taken to different areas in my life as well, outside the IYPC. So yeah, I think that was the main one for me.
Fantastic. Dan, you've recently written a LinkedIn post about care and well-being. Like, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think it's just that being part of this collective, our boundaries are really respected. I think that really helped me realize that speaking up doesn't always mean having the answer, but we can also use it to protect our energy or asking for support. And I think it also made me realize that's also part of leadership. So yeah, just learning how to say no when I need help has just been huge.
I think I also really but one thing that I really learned through this is why care matters, because we're always talking about how it's important to care for one another. It's important to do things well. But I had never heard a conversation of care within your work environment and what that could look like practically. And here, for example, we just left a session where we started by grounding ourselves into it. So you have the right intention. I've never had that in other spaces. And I think that intentionality is so key to how we work. And it's something that I'm trying desperately to find in other sectors and other spaces. And I exactly don't find that. And it makes me kind of want to keep coming back because I know how much better the work looks like that. So I think this is definitely a massive plus of this working model that I don't see it elsewhere.
Well, thanks for adding that, Shirley. So we're going to talk a little bit about shared power and what that actually looks like within like the collective and the partnership with the foundation. So I'm really curious to hear from you guys in terms of like, what does shared power feel like in this partnership when it's done well?
I have such a clear visual of this. It feels like having breathe in the room. Like when you walk into a space and you don't have to like shrink yourself or translate your experience into something more professional. I feel like the collective does it so well because it feels like trust. We're not just being consulted, but we're responsible for the decisions. So yeah, it just feels like being able to breathe and be yourself.
Thanks, Dan. Would anyone else like to add to that question? Go on, Sam.
Yeah. I think when you first said the question, the first word that came to my mind is empowerment. That it creates a feeling of empowerment and a sense of empowerment, that every individual in the room's voice matters. And the fact that it gives also breeds confidence. I think kind of echo what Dan said a little bit. That it breeds confidence. Once you understand and you feel like you have that shared power, you start to feel like your voice matters and you feel empowered to make decisions. And then it kind of removes that kind of imposter syndrome as well of, can I say this? Should I say this? Can I do that? What will they say if I do this? It just removes that element of doubt. And you start to be able to, just speak freely and start to also see the value in yourself. I think that's a key for us. So empowerment and value. You start to really see and understand the value in yourself as well. And that you start to become more empowered that what I'm saying is adding value and you become more confident in that. And just again, removes that element of self-doubt. So yeah.
I'm curious because we hear all the time from like different teams that kind of notion of imposter syndrome. And I'm really curious to just ask, was there a point for you in the IYPC when you either didn't feel that way or maybe you never felt that way? And if you did feel that imposter syndrome, like what helped to sort of alleviate it? I'm seeing lots of smiles.
I will kick off.
People who can't see it, I'm seeing lots of smiles.
Yeah, it's a funny question. I definitely felt it in multiple moments. And I think that just comes with, for me, particularly second guessing the value of what I'm about to say, and not just the value in terms of the accuracy of the statement, but how much it is adding in that moment. I think I was always thinking about that a bit too much. And the thing that made it really go away for me, or at least decrease, was one, talking to other people in the collective, because we would have kind of the similar experiences saying, oh yeah, that was a bit weird at the beginning, but they really listen. Yeah. And then as you sort of go to the journey, like I'm on my third year now, and this is my final year, you realize that in some ways it's self-inflicted. It's coming from parts and narratives you've been hearing from society, you've been telling yourself, but that the other person doesn't even know, and they're just kind of like holding you as you are fully. And once you realize that there is space for you to show yourself fully and there is no sort of criticism, it sort of fades away. And that became really clear as I went along this journey and worked with different funding managers, because they would be so curious about all these things that I had to bring, and even like similarities that we have together. Like, how many times have I spoken about reality TV shows with funding managers? And that in and of itself helps to humanize a little bit the experience and to get to the point where we understand that, well, we're just both coworkers. I bring expertise, you bring expertise. I bring doubts, you bring doubts. But together we'll shape a picture that feels as close to the goal as possible.
Thanks, Shirley. Dan, Thalia, Sam. I mean, Sam, you this question came from you sort of mentioning imposter syndrome. For you, how was that?
I think for me it applies in a different way. So I think I've said it before. My background is heavy around consultancy, paid consultancy, corporate XYZ. I was coming into a space where a lot of people and a lot of my colleagues had seemed to have a bit more experience around the grant funding, around the social impact space. And even though I know that I'm good at what I do in terms of my professional life, there was just times when I just felt like, yo, can I really be I guess the phrase that comes to mind is, am I well suited for this space? Because it felt like my skill set maybe did not 100% align,
Mm.
should we just say, or my mannerisms as well. I think that's a good point, actually. My mannerisms 100% align. So where, again, it's a good point, actually. Being a paid consultant in a corporate space and a paid consultant in a social space, I think there's mannerisms that are not transferable, and there's attitudes that are not transferable that maybe I brought to a space that did create some imposter syndrome. It was a healthy challenge to, one, adopt new mannerisms and new ways of working, new cultures, but also to just, again, kind of what Shirley said, just the fact of it's probably in my head that when I think I'm probably being a menace and so forth, that I'm probably not. I'm probably being appreciative for who I am. I'm sure Tyler and you can probably attest to some of those moments. So, but I think it's, again, going back to that point, like, just being empowered to feel okay. It's okay to be me.
Mm.
I don't need to, even though, yes, the social space, the current space is a bit different to what I'm used to. That's okay. And I'm accepted how I am. And I won't say I don't need to change. I won't go that far, but I just say that, yeah, it's not held against me, should we just say. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Sam. Dan, Thalia, anything you want to add before we move on to the next question?
I think for me, it's like the first year, maybe I had like this mask on because like I didn't want people to almost like recognize I had flaws. I was human, that I didn't understand things, right?
Mm.
And I think it's something that a few of the members at least in my group, felt. And it wasn't until like maybe the second retreat that we had this conversation that like, did you understand this? Did you? And it was like that mask like came off where we were like, why were we all just pretending to understand this? Why didn't any of us just ask the question? And it was like, we had like our egos up, and as soon as like we let ourselves be vulnerable, I think we were able to actually get on with the work in a more human way, where we didn't have to have this guard up and pretend that we knew everything, and it was okay to ask questions. I think that was like the moment where we were kind of like, okay, we can chill now, like we can just do this as humans rather than like as professionals. We're still professionals, but yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. Thanks, Dan. Thalia, I think you want to add something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when I think back and reflect on the first few years, I think my personal development from the first to the second year was really steep. Like, I think I'd kind of been in a pattern of like just sitting and watching and waiting for my moment to contribute. And I don't know, just really being more on the back seat. And like, that is just maybe a bit more me and my personality and how I prefer to do things. But I think once I found my footing in the group and in the organization, yeah, I've never led in the way that I've led in this space. And I've taken so much from being able to do that in this experience. And I think, yeah, it's helped me in my confidence. It's helped me feel like my voice is valuable, helped me feel like I'm reliable, that people listen to me. So yeah, like I've learned a lot. And I think it was somehow like the group and the people and how nice everyone was and how we gelled, and like having Huddle there as the bridge between us and Esme was definitely also really helpful. But I guess also just having Esme as a very willing listener was great as well.
Mm. And can I just ask, because you've all kind of indicated it, but the length of time on the collective, do you think that that has had an impact on you or supported the feeling of imposter syndrome, or kind of like supported the skills development? Like, do you think there's been an impact on that? Do you think it would have been different if you'd had like a 1-year term, for example, on the collective?
I think from a personal point of view, I would just say that I feel like the 3-year term was positive in the sense that it lets you start and see things through. In especially during our time, when we were more scoping and shaping what this should look like and what this should be, I think 1 year would not have been enough time. And I think the fact of going back to some of the points we mentioned before about empowerment, shared power, feeling, and so forth, I think 3 years enables you to kind of break down the barriers. Second year lets you to apply what you've learned, and the
Mm.
third year lets you become more confident in what you've learned as well. I think 1 year might just be a bit too short to break that down, learn something new, trust someone, and then just go on to the next thing. But that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I hear that. And Shirley, you've been like nodding vigorously, so I'm going to go over to you.
No, I definitely feel like 1 year could not have been enough. Exactly because of the things that Sam said, but also because this is a space where we're able to rethink what our skill set is and how that sort of applies. Like in other sectors, I find that we talk about words like communicating, presenting in very narrow terms. And in the collective, you get to experience that in completely different settings. And in year one, maybe you're becoming a clear communicator within the collective, but you still haven't quite figured out how to communicate clearly when speaking to EF and other funders and other young people in the sector. And that kind of comes along as you're going. As you said that, I was thinking back to like year one Shirley, who believed communicated the best, could always be in every room. And now I communicate completely different. I understand communication to be so differently, to have a different goal. And I don't think I would have ever been able to get to that point had I not had the 3 years. Exactly as Sam said, because now I'm confident that how I'm presenting myself and how I'm speaking, how I'm communicating, which is my favorite skill for myself, is completely, it's just very different. Like year one Shirley and year 3, they're cousins, but they're definitely not the same person.
Thanks, Shirley. Does anyone want to add anything before I move on to the next question? No? Okay, so we've talked about we talked about some of the challenges, but does anyone want to expand on like what have been the challenges or tensions that come with working as a team and working in partnership with a foundation to do this work? Sam, big grin on your face. I feel like you want to get into it.
I think it's just about from my point of view, and I keep referencing stuff, but I think in career life, I've worked with people that are very like similar minded, whether it will be like STEM based, engineer based kind of stuff. So we all think in a certain mindset, and we all see the way to, even though we have our differences, you can kind of understand how someone got somewhere and why they got somewhere. They articulate in a similar language. I think obviously coming into this space, because I said it's social compared to corporate, like the language, the way of thinking, the thought processes, like Talia said, some people like work in a certain way, some people like in a certain way. I feel like it was all different and it's all adopting. So where in the corporate space as a paid consultant, pressure, time, delivery, it's cost, time, delivery. Those are the 3 things that you got to worry about. Whereas in this space, because of the nature of work, it felt like those 3 were not a priority. People weren't driven by those same constraints or pressures. And I think that's a beautiful thing as well. But obviously there was a bit of like, I understand how people work and working cultures. I think was a massive one for me. And yeah, caused a bit of tensions. But obviously, yeah, overall overcame them and we did some good work. So yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Would anyone want to speak on that? Challenges and tensions to kind of working as a collective within the partnership.
I was going to add that I think because we started in 2020 and when we started the work, it was a very different context we were operating in. I mean, I would say the reason that this is a mostly remote position was because of COVID, right? Because it probably would have looked really different if that didn't happen. So it enabled people who probably wouldn't have accessed this position to access it. But I think once everything kind of opened up again, it presented different challenges because, yeah, you suddenly had 10 more things to think about than you did when we were all sitting at home. And I think especially moving from like my cohort to the next one, it took some adjustment to figure out what's the right level of commitment to ask of people, what's the right amount of capacity to suggest for this role. And I think we've seen with different people, like there is a bit of a sweet spot of like where people are at in their life, depending on what they can get from this role and how much they can give as well. Because, yeah, you can really do a lot and learn a lot, but depends if you've got a lot of competing things. So I think some challenges are around like capacity and time, and also the fact that it's no one's full-time job. So it's hard to like feel like you're achieving all the things you want to achieve sometimes.
I 100% agree, but I also think in some aspects I have a little bit of a different perspective. I agree to the capacity thing. I think that was one of my key challenges, figuring out how we move as a collective, because I have never seen such scheduling struggles before when I joined the collective. And exactly as I said, because this is not anybody's full-time work, but also because people prefer to work in different times of the day. Whereas in a more corporate setting, we are all just accepting the fact that we're going to work on teams, that it's going to be at these hours. We conform a lot. So here, the price of freedom really comes with a bit of like figuring out what feels comfortable. But I guess I still feel like the timelines are a bit of a challenge. I have to be honest. I agree that in the beginning, we spent a lot of time ideating. And in the first year, I also used to get a bit like, why are we here for so long? And now I can really see the value of it. But I find that we do incredible work, but sometimes we get the ground running so fast because of how much we want to deliver, how much we want to help the sector, that somewhere along the line, I feel a bit like, oh, it's feeling a bit harder than perhaps is what I would like. But I also understand that that's to do with the kind of timelines that we work and how the funding cycle goes. And some of those are inevitable. But I find that especially when working with EF, where you have another set of calendars to deal with and the timeline, it all just feels so like, oh, no, 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 here we go again. But in the end, the product is always really beautiful. So I think it's also important to reflect on what you learn from these moments. Because for me, for example, I realized that I really thrive under pressure, yes, but I don't necessarily enjoy continuously being under pressure. So there's like that sweet spot. And then being able to bring that kind of information back to the collective sort of helps me to move forward, because I'm now doing the round 2 of like creativity funds. And the way I'm advocating for certain things is only because I've got an understanding from those challenges, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Sam, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, it's just something that triggered when Shirley was talking. I think one thing that I found hard was also the intentions was also like, again, previous past experiences, there is a thing of like we just test, iterate, drop, iterate, and then we go from there. We understand we're not going to get it right at the first iteration. And I think in this experience with IYPC, there was a lot of, because there's a lot of uncertainty for different reasons, we just wanted to make sure that, you know, the language, the product, the everything around it was delivered at the right, again, there was value in that, delivered at the right time, at the right spec, and the right audience. And I think it was just a conflict of the two halves where it's just like, I'm a bit being me, thinking, why can't we just do this now, test it out, see what happens, then go get the feedback, then go again? You know, why can't we go on that cycle? And obviously, again, one of the things I've learned in this program as well is the fact of like the importance of like language, you know, how things can be perceived, especially when we're dealing with real life experiences and how to handle with care. So I think it was just a bit of both. It was just like, it did cause a bit of tension sometimes because I just wanted to be in meetings thinking like, let's just drop this now and see what happens. But like,
I
we're
feel
never
like
going to the answer.
I feel like you're reliving meetings right
You,
now, Sam, and
you're
I
not
can
get
even
me,
picture. I can
so
even pick. I
I'm
can
not saying
even
that.
picture some of the meetings.
Can I say? You're not saying more than that. Get me, but it's just like, you know, and I think it was, yeah, like, again, back to what kind of Shirley said, there's obviously value that I've seen in the importance of taking that time to scope, to, you know, go around the boy and so forth. But I will definitely say internally, I hope I didn't cause it externally, but internally, this could be a tension to me about like, let's just test this. Let's just see what happens and let's just have a go. Like, we're the first to do this. We've got to accept that. And this, do you know what I mean? But again, yeah, pros and cons, you want to say each. So yeah, I'll say, sorry, don't take it from Dan, but yeah, I would say that.
Right, Sam. I'm going to move on to the next question because I feel like we could be in this chat for like ages. But could each of you share a moment where you feel the collective has made a tangible impact, big or small, that you're proud of?
I'll kick it off so that I can shush. I think for me, a big moment was the Youth-led Creativity Fund, but for different reasons. So obviously the Youth-led Creativity Fund is amazing. It's an opportunity to really like input into youth leadership, creativity, and all those lovely things. And we really came together as a collective to make decisions. But I think that was, for my collective at least, the moment where we went from being multiple people with all these different opinions to sort of like this beautiful unison kind of voice that incorporates all these things, because there was so much care for each other as we were navigating those moments and those difficult decisions of saying like, oh my God, these are all amazing. How do we pick this? How do we figure out what's not tokenistic and all these things? But it was also the moment where we really leaned into each individual expertise. And I don't even mean like, oh, because I have a background in X and he has a background in Y, but more like he has a good intuition of X and I have a good intuition of Y. I remember so vividly how many times me and Dan were like, oh, but I'm not really feeling the joy I want to feel. Do you get it? And we would have these conversations continuously. And now we see the fund that it's like the organizations that have been funded, how they're flourishing. And we're now thinking about the second iteration and bringing that again. And I realized the power of sort of bringing all together and thinking, okay, we all want the same goal, but how can we get small pieces of everybody's vision into that goal so it shapes into something? I think that was for me the moment where I was like, wow, the value of a team is right here, because individually we would not have been able to deliver that well. And with EF as well, sorry, you know.
Thanks, Shirley. Who would like to share a moment of impact?
Yeah, there's two parts. I'm gonna freeball Thalia after this. But for me, the first one was around the whole. I'm glad Shirley went first actually, because being I guess the cohort before her, for me, one of my biggest part was getting the approval and the buy-in from EF to actually do a youth-led fund. Obviously, we had some scraping ideas with me, Thalia, Betty, and Dan, and the rest of the cohort as well. But yeah, just seeing the motivation, the passion, the support from EF, and then obviously now knowing how it's like grown to what Shirley and Dan and their cohort has delivered has been a really proud moment of me. And the other proud moment is obviously the work that Thalia and Co did on the values. I think just seeing, she referenced it earlier, and I'm going to let her speak more about it. But I think just seeing how well received it was. And I think that was like, in my opinion, I may be wrong, forgive me, but it's like, that was the first deliverable that we delivered that actually transcended past that. It was put into some of the communications for EF, as to come other colleagues. Other organizations were trying to base their own express on the values and so forth. So Tyler, hit me for a little free ball for you, if you want.
I'll take it. I'll take it. No, I definitely agree. Like, it's hard to pick one thing that I'm proud of, but the values is definitely one of them. And I kind of mentioned it before. It's kind of like my baby from the first hackathon to all the ways it's used now. But it is something I'm really proud of. And I think it's a resource that can grow and evolve, I guess. You know, it's not a stationary thing. Yeah, I'm proud of it in all the ways that we live it, and it's used in different projects. It's not just the IYPC thing. It's like it's become the benchmark somehow of like how we evaluate our projects. And I think that's really cool because it was like really truly youth led and youth delivered. Like we did that, and now it's like something we use across our projects, and I think that's really cool.
Amazing. Thanks, Thalia. And Dan, what about you?
For the Involving Young People's Fund, because just watching those young people go through the journeys, similar journeys to what we've been through, and watching their confidence like skyrocket, I think it was really evident in our like final retreat, just seeing how open, and because these were young people who they didn't even want to put their cameras on in the first meeting. And then to see them sharing something like so vulnerable and so open about their experiences in the final retreat and being just really open with us about their experiences and in a really positive way. I just found it so fulfilling to watch that journey and to have been part of it. So yeah, that was wonderful. And like it's really a testament to the previous cohort as well for pushing for that fund to have taken place.
And we're going to get to hear more about the Involving Young People's Fund in later episodes. So I'm just going to let listeners know about that now. So the next question I'd want to ask all of you is like, how do you think organizations change when they bring young people into decision-making from the very beginning?
I mean, I'll just jump in. It's just the amount of times I've heard from Esme staff themselves just like, I've never thought about that. Like, I think it just brings a perspective that isn't always in the room, or just like just a different one. Because I think it's very easy when you exist in an organization to have the same ways of thinking. So I think it's refreshing and energizing to bring young people directly into the heart of an organization. And yeah, it's something I'm a big advocate of. I remember when we had like the IYPC went to Wales with the Blue Spaces project, and we delivered a session on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And my little table was about involving young people, basically. And I was like, there doesn't have to be like a real reason to involve young people. I think the benefit is just doing it anyway, because you will benefit from it, even if it's a bit more time consuming, even if it's more expensive. The benefit for you, your organization, and the young person is worth it. And I hope people heard me when I said that, but I really believe it. Like, there doesn't have to be a reason. And that's why there's no experience needed for this role, because you just need to be a young person.
Following up from what Thalia says, I feel like so many organizations wait until like the perfect moment, but I feel like there is no perfect moment. You just need to start, and it can be small, but like you said, like you should involve young people early, not just right at the end. Also pay them properly and be able to like listen even when it's uncomfortable. And so I think organizations need to stop waiting until like everything is polished and start like bringing young people into the messy parts, because I think that's where like the good things happen.
The point that comes going off what Tyler said again, but Kenneth management is it breaks the mold. It breaks the mold. Whether we like it or not, if you've been doing something for a set amount of years, you're going to have a certain way of thinking and there's certain things. I mean, there's funding managers that have said, I remember there's a conversation with a fund manager and they were just like, yeah, we just always funded them because it's a STEM. And I was just like, okay, but why? And that bringing that new set of eyes really, or that new perspective, that new challenge as well, is really positive. And I think there's obviously going back to that co-creation space, there is so much evidence and research that's been done in the value of rainbow teams. So teams of different backgrounds, diversity and things and so forth. And I think, yes, you can have diversity in gender, in race and so forth, but I think diversity in age is really important as well. Because yes, they may not have as many characters as you, but their lived experience is still as valued as well. And also it's a good perception for the organization to just show that we are for young people, we are working with young people, and we're working by young people. And I think that's a good message to portray.
Thank you. So what do you hope future cohorts of the Involving Young People Collective will experience, do, or build differently?
Break the mold.
Love that.
Yeah, break the mold. I think it can get to a point where people just try to do iterations of the past because that's the standard that they're being held to a little bit. And I think they should just feel confident to just break the mold. Yeah, there's been a young led fine. If they want to do something else, feel free to do that, be empowered to do so. And if they don't want to do that, that's totally fine as well. But just try and be innovative, be radical, as some people in my court would say, be radical. So yeah.
Thanks, Shirley, Thalia, Dan, what do you hope future cohorts of the Involving Young People Collective will experience?
These are big questions. I hope they experience the power of the joy and the care that we have in this collective. That was transformative to me, to have a better understanding of the spaces where you can really thrive. And I just hope to see this like multiply in all the sectors, because I can't imagine why we work the way we do in other spaces when there is this better future. But also, I definitely agree with this radical change, because I think the idea is to create a mindset shift, a permanent mindset shift, where we don't even start to think about making projects without having all the relevant people in the room. And when we get to that point when this is not even something that we're like advocating for and explaining the benefit of, but it's just kind of like our default mode, then I know like we've reached the next stage where we need to think, okay, what is the next iteration? So I hope that whatever they come up with, whatever they decide, is kind of building onto that future where we can all, as Sam really rightfully said, like we're all at the table working together, co-producing intergenerationally and thinking about what is best for our communities in that sense. And that kind of work, it's expensive, but it's expensive because you're building long-lasting, sustainable things. I really need people to stop thinking that just cheaper and fast is better, because we have so many examples of this not working and breaking. I think we all need to start thinking a bit more as to what is the sustainable vision that we want to imagine for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and start working towards that.
Amazing. Thank you. Dan, Thalia?
My side, I hope they feel more ownership. I don't want them to just contribute to the model that we've created, but also like challenge it, question why we did certain things, really make it evolve. So I think, yeah, just for them to have ownership over the whole collective and do it how they see fit, because we've done it one way, the collective before us did it another way, and I'd like them to just take that and use it how they see fit.
I mean, 5 years in, there's definitely been like change. And I've also seen us kind of go back to systems that we tried in year one, but didn't necessarily work in year one, but work much better in year 5. So that's an interesting thing to note as well. But Thalia, over to you.
Yeah, I was thinking, I hope that future consultants are a bit like, not kind of, but I think everyone has this phase in the first year where they're like, I'm confused and I don't know what's going on, but they're like, think it's, I don't know. Maybe I hope they trust the process more, that like you don't have to get it straight away. You will get it. You definitely will. Just kind of like let yourself go with the process. And yeah, maybe don't be harsh on yourself, rather than being kind of like, just allow yourself to go in with curiosity and know that there's support there and it's okay to ask questions. Like it's really okay.
Thank you. And Sam, I feel like you want to add something to what you said earlier. Do you want to bring that in?
I feel like, I hope they use AI, artificial intelligence. No, I'm joking. I think, yeah, every space I go into now, everyone's talking about AI. So, if they don't use AI, fantastic. If they don't use AI, I think it's totally fine as well. But I think it would be interesting to understand how, they can implement something that's AI that is not emotionally driven into maybe an emotionally driven space. If they can find a good space and home for that, that'd be quite interesting actually. But yeah, I'll leave that for the next cohort to figure out. That's my challenge to them.
Good luck.
It's the baton that Sam is on. And then finally, final question. What would you say to an organization in listening to this? so an organization that thinks it wants to involve young people but isn't sure how, what's the first step that you would recommend to them? Equally, also, even for a young person who's never done something like this, like what's the first thing that you would recommend to them? So you can either look at it from like the organization perspective or from a young person perspective.
I saw, this might not be relevant, yeah, but I saw something the other day that said, if you want to be successful, bite more than you can chew, then figure out how to chew it. And I think what I took from that was just like, just do it. Like, if you want to achieve something, don't worry about, I think what everyone else has said about the perfect time, the right time. Obviously, with young people, there's a bit of safeguarding them. You have to be cautious of that aspect as well. But I think just do it, just test it, run it back, and then obviously the feedback, incorporate, and you won't never get it right. I'm sure Tyler would agree that our experience at the beginning and experience of the next cohort was probably a bit better and so forth, or a little bit more guided, to just say. And that's fine. It's okay. It was the first time. We still had a great time. We still had good experiences from that, and we still delivered the value. So I think first thing, just do it and trust them and empower them. So that's what I'd say. So bite more than you can chew. They figure out how to chew it.
I really like that, Sam. Maybe when you say, I was going to say, I think people need to understand that behind every action, there was once a moment of curiosity, and there's a reason why it starts that way. So for organizations that are interested, chase that curiosity, speak to people that have been doing the work. Huddle is known in the space exactly for this. Try to understand. You don't have to go from, I'm thinking about this, to I'm going to do it next week, but you can start the conversation within internally and the understanding in your mind to get to the point where you understand the value of this in whatever format that is. And I agree as well with Sam, like you have to empower them. You have to see the benefit in upskilling them in the same way that you would do with other people. So I feel like that's self-explanatory at this point. But for young people, I honestly think just dare to dream. I in the beginning, I was so scared to just dream beyond the small spaces I was in. And then I met all these people and I'm like, wow, like they all just started by wanting something, by trying to go out and do it. And then if it fails, okay, you lick your wounds and you go again. And again, the power of young people is we always know someone who knows something, who knows how to do something. So tapping into that, and that always comes with curiosity. I honestly think curiosity has always steered me in the right way. So I think that's the message I'm passing forward.
Thank you. And Dan, Thalia, would you like to add anything before we close up today's podcast?
Yeah, there's so many youth opportunities now, right? And this is something that is wild and I love it. But something that someone told me recently is like, is this youth opportunity an opportunity for the organization or is it an actual opportunity for the young person? I think that's something I always bear in mind now, that is, when I create projects or like when I'm looking at things to join, is it an actual opportunity for me or is it just an opportunity for the organization? And it doesn't have to be wrong or right, but I think if you go in with that mindset, like who is benefiting from this and how am I going to benefit from this? What am I going to gain from this? It helps guide you a little bit better.
Thanks, Dan. Thalia, any final words?
Yeah, I think if it's an organization who's thinking about moving more into this space, like whether it's young people or just communities more generally, I think, yeah, whatever reasons or barriers you perceive there to be for not doing this, I promise there are workarounds. And I think there are a lot of barriers we put on ourselves to be like, oh, but I can't do it. I don't want to do it this way. I want to wait till it's the right moment. But like, if you don't start, you're probably never going to do it. So I think it's just like break down that first step of just stepping into the unknown, I guess, and accepting that it's going to be a bit messy, but the end product is worth it.
Wonderful, amazing. Thank you all so much. So this is the point where we pause the conversation. And I would like to say thank you to our listeners for joining us for this episode of Huddle Up. And a huge thank you to today's guests for sharing their stories and insights. If you'd like to learn more about Huddle, explore our work, or get in touch about involving young people in your program, strategy, or organization, you'll find links in the description of this episode. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening now. And join us next time as we continue holding space for real stories, shared power, and collective change. See you next time.